Yeah, this was done out of respect for DB. This is an opportunity for her to chase the title in possibly her last season. Everything happened on great terms, and she's always going to be part of the Mercury organization. Yeah, I think this is an opportunity for others to get minutes.
The Phoenix Mercury and Dewanna Bonner have reached a buyout agreement where Dewanna Bonner can leave the Phoenix Mercury and she can go play for a different team to win a championship in this playoff season. Now, just so many things going through my head. One, is this her last season? Is she retiring and I just missed the memo? Two, 17-year vet. Girl looks good. Three, which team is she gonna go to?
Well, WNBA, the gift that keeps on giving, looks like they are continuing to allow players to scam left and right. Dewanna, the scammer Bonner, is at it again. Highway robbery. She's scamming. I don't know when this league is going to get professional. You're letting people take money and just stop showing up to work.
Just when the Fever thought they were settling into the season, the entire storyline took a hard left turn. Dewanna Bonner was out halfway through the year, and the internet immediately went into detective mode. But buried beneath the shock was an even more interesting question involving Caitlin Clark. Had she been trying to tell people something all along? And once the full story comes out, who is going to look completely different?
You guys heard what's going on? Have you guys heard what's going on? Boy, you want to talk about somebody who was unloyal. Y'all not going to believe this, man.
Basically, in the NBA and in the WNBA, deal where a player and the team that the player is signed with can come together and agree to, end their contract. Now it gives her an opportunity to land on a team that's in the playoffs and that's a contending team. Know exactly what team needs Dewanna Bonner. As you can see, the photo here is the Las Vegas Aces. Because if you don't know, their forward Nalissa Smith exited the game against the Toronto Tempo after a knee injury that she suffered.
The WNBA thought it had already survived enough drama this season, but Dewanna Bonner just managed to throw another grenade into the conversation. With the postseason approaching, the Phoenix Mercury and the veteran forward have agreed to a contract buyout, suddenly turning Bonner into one of the biggest names on the market at the exact moment championship contenders are preparing for the playoffs.
Get to quit right before the playoffs and then try to go get on a championship team. This is nuts. Dewanna Bonner has quit on another team the same way she did Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever, and it looks like she's going to get a chance to go be on another championship level team. Once again, the WNBA is a complete joke. Dewanna Bonner quit. Skylar Diggins quit once she found out she was getting benched. This stuff is ridiculous. We got to get her final season last year when she was with the Indiana Fever. How long is she going to get to run with this might be my final season thing? This better be the final season at this point. All these old heads need to get up out of here. They the ones causing a lot of the issues around the league anyway. But my thing is, how is this acceptable? She just did this last season.
And because this is the WNBA, the story immediately became bigger than basketball. It dragged Indiana, Caitlin Clark, Phoenix, playoff ambitions, and Bonner's complicated recent career right back into the spotlight.
So much in this league. Just turned 39 years old, been in the league since 2009. But her wish was to, go at it one more time in the playoffs, and the Mercury granted that wish. No bad blood between each other, nothing but positive things to say about one another when this news came out. And, Bonner's still a very productive player, even at her age, averaging about 10 points this season for the Mercury. Very versatile player, can play the 3, the 4, even played some small ball 5 this season. And she brings playoff experience, which could be, very appealing to,
Now, before the internet turns this into something it is not, Bonner did not literally walk out of the Fever halfway through this season. She left Indiana in 2025 after playing only 9 games for the franchise, eventually returning to Phoenix, where she had spent much of her career. The latest development is that Phoenix and Bonner have now mutually agreed to a buyout, giving the 39-year-old a chance to join a playoff contender before the postseason.
Dewanna Bonner, if you don't know, again, there's a reason why we called her DeQuitta last year. And again, everyone's talking about, what were the big things with Dewanna? It's like, my thing was like, the reason for Dewanna leaving the Fever is, wow, I don't want to be the fifth option anymore. Wow. Dewanna is now gone. And it says here, Nick, the GM, says the buyout gives her the opportunity to chase a title in what could be her final postseason.
But here is where things get interesting, because Bonner's latest decision has reopened an old conversation about why her Indiana chapter ended so quickly in the first place, and why Caitlin Clark keeps finding herself somewhere in the middle of these storylines. Bonner entered this season as a veteran with an extraordinary resume. She is a 6-time All-Star, a 2-time WNBA champion, and one of the most accomplished players of her generation. In 2026, she also became only the 3rd player in WNBA history to reach 8,000 career points while becoming the league's all-time leader in career wins. So this is not some random veteran desperately trying to find a roster spot. This is a player who has already built a resume that could fill an entire highlight reel. Mercury general manager Nick Urin specifically said the buyout was arranged to give Bonner that opportunity, and Bonner herself has not announced retirement. So this is not simply a story about a player giving up. It is a story about a veteran recognizing that the championship window is closing and deciding she would rather chase one more ring than spend the final weeks of the season watching the playoffs from home. And honestly, that makes the decision a lot more understandable.
Agent, according to ESPN, said that they were great. Many teams in the league wouldn't consider this, but this is a special circumstance, and Phoenix is a very player-friendly organization. She's really appreciative of them. With the GM going into detail saying, because of the relationship we have with Dewanna, we worked out a buyout agreement that gives her the opportunity to chase a title in what could be her final postseason. And then saying Dewanna will always be a part of the Mercury family, and we wish her all the best. And then Dewanna Bonner putting out a statement saying, in part, at this stage of my career, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm grateful to the Mercury for giving me the opportunity to play in what could be one of my final postseason opportunities. Saying at the end here, being a part of this franchise has given me so many incredible memories, and Phoenix will always be a special part of my career. So at this point, the question is, where is she going to go?
The funny part is that the WNBA internet has already turned the entire thing into a courtroom. One side is saying Bonner is doing exactly what a veteran should do by trying to finish her career with a contender. Another side is looking at her recent career movement and asking whether this is becoming a pattern. Then there is the Caitlin Clark connection, because apparently the WNBA can have a completely unrelated transaction, and somehow Clark's name still walks into the room 5 minutes later carrying popcorn. That connection comes from Bonner's short stint in Indiana. Bonner joined the Fever in 2025, and the pairing looked interesting on paper. Indiana had Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Bonner found herself matched up against her former team and former teammate Caitlin Clark. What happened next was exactly the kind of sequence that makes social media forget every other event happening in the world. Clark and Bonner got tangled up while battling for a position, and the confrontation escalated after the whistle. Multiple players became involved, technical fouls were handed out, and Clark received one, despite being visibly confused about why she had been assessed it. The game eventually produced multiple technicals and an ejection, while Sophie Cunningham became part of the viral aftermath after appearing to point at Bonner for an extended period.
Think about it. What did she say about the Indiana Fever when she left them? I don't think she did all of this. I remember Amber Cox talking about her, but I don't remember her thanking Indiana and all that. The Indiana fans cheering for her when she hit that punk-ass free throw that Clark got her to the line with so she could climb the ranks and scoring, but that's neither here nor there. Dewanna Bonner, to me, is going outside, man. Like, where's the loyalty with these teams? You left Connecticut, came to Indiana, played a handful of games, then refused to continue playing. Even though you was playing like dirt. You was playing like dirt. Straight refused to continue playing. Then you had Stephanie White covering for you. She just lied to everybody. Tomorrow, yeah, I spoke to her. She's doing fine. 24, 30 hours later, she told me she ain't speak to her. She don't know, and she's worried about the team who's playing.
The real twist is that Dewanna Bonner's latest decision has made people revisit everything that happened during her brief time in Indiana. Because what looked like a simple roster change at the time now feels much more complicated when viewed alongside everything that has happened since. Bonner and Caitlin Clark were teammates for only a short period, but that chapter left enough tension and unanswered questions behind that their eventual meeting as opponents immediately reignited the conversation. When former teammates end up facing each other again, every ordinary basketball interaction suddenly carries a little more history. And that is exactly what happened when Bonner and Clark crossed paths in 2026. Their confrontation became another reminder that the Indiana chapter was never completely forgotten. Search of another championship opportunity. There is no evidence that she did. Clark never publicly forecast Bonner's buyout, and there is certainly no reason to pretend she had some secret basketball crystal ball hidden underneath her locker. However, if the argument is that Clark's arrival helped expose just how dramatically the WNBA has changed, then the conversation becomes much more interesting. The league now operates under an entirely different level of attention, where roster moves that might once have passed quietly can become major storylines almost instantly, and where a veteran player changing teams can trigger debates about everything from chemistry and loyalty to championship ambitions and career legacy.
She's not retiring. Basically, she's like, this team stinks. Get me out of here. Like, this team stinks. And like, they were never going to make the playoffs at the trade deadline. They were never going to make the playoffs at the deadline. Like, it's as simple as that. They were at the deadline, there was a near 0% chance this team made the playoffs. Why would they not try to trade her? Why? Because no one would trade for Dewanna Bonner. 2 years in a row, no one would trade Dewanna Bonner. And the thing is that, like, when it comes to Dewanna, is they couldn't just cut her. They effectively cut her.
That is exactly what has happened with Bonner. Her departure from Phoenix is not simply about leaving a team that failed to reach the postseason. Bonner is attempting to use what could be the final stretch of her remarkable career to find another championship-caliber roster. And because she remains productive enough to contribute, contenders have a legitimate reason to consider bringing her aboard. During the 2026 season, Bonner has averaged roughly 10.6 points, 6.1 rebounds, and 1.2 steals per game across 37 appearances, which is obviously not the same statistical production she delivered during the peak years of her career. But it is still enough to make a contender wonder whether her size, versatility, experience, and postseason resume could become valuable when the games become more intense. Her numbers do not scream superstar anymore, but championship teams rarely need every player to be a superstar. Sometimes they simply need some positional needs, and rotation hierarchy, which means adding a veteran like Bonner, requires more than simply deciding that she would look good wearing a different uniform. Several potential landing spots have already entered the conversation, with teams such as the Atlanta Dream and Dallas Wings among the franchises that could potentially have the flexibility to make something happen, while the New York Liberty represent another fascinating possibility, because championship contenders sometimes reach the stage where the front office starts looking at the roster and asking whether there is somehow room for one more experienced weapon.
17 years in the league, I think this is it. But not just yet. I think she goes to the Las Vegas Aces, given the injury to Nalissa Smith. If she's not coming back for the rest of the season, this opens up a window for her, given her relationship with A'ja Wilson. I think she chases a ring one more time, and what better team to do that than with the Las Vegas Aces? And then she sunsets her career. An amazing career it was. I think she goes to the Las Vegas Aces.
At a certain point, championship roster building becomes less about admitting that you already have enough talent and more about asking whether you can somehow squeeze another talented player through the door without knocking over the furniture. Basketball's version of collecting Pokemon is apparently alive and well. Still, the more important question is whether adding Bonner would actually make one of these contenders better. That sounds obvious until you consider where Bonner is in her career. At 39 years old, she is no longer being asked to carry an offense for an entire season, and any team considering her would need to understand that her greatest value may come from fitting into an established system, rather than becoming the centerpiece of one. A contender does not need Bonner to suddenly score 20 points every night. Instead, the ideal situation would involve her knocking down open shots, providing size on the wing, grabbing important rebounds, defending intelligently, making experienced decisions, and helping younger players navigate the kind of pressure that becomes completely different once the postseason begins. That experience is not something a box score can fully measure. Bonner has already won championships in Phoenix, including titles in 2009 and 2014, and she understands what it takes to survive a long playoff run. She has been through the pressure, the expectations, the difficult road games, the adjustments, and the moments when one possession can completely change the direction of a series.
Should Atlanta Dream go sign Dewanna Bonner to play? You know what I say? Go get her ass today, because she is standing outside knocking at the door, rocking bling. You know what it is? 2 championship rings. I'm dead serious. Go get her to come off the bench, because she has something our current bench doesn't have. Defense, experience, length, and she can make a pass. Bonner wants a title, Dream has one in sight. A veteran with 2 rings, she already knows the fight. We need help off the bench.
That history could be exactly why a contender decides to take the gamble. That is very different from simply walking away from basketball. And this is where the original Bonner quit narrative needs some context. Calling her a quitter might generate attention in a YouTube title, but the actual situation is more complicated. Bonner has not announced her retirement, she has not walked away from basketball altogether, and she has not indicated that she is finished competing. Instead, she negotiated a buyout with Phoenix so she could pursue another postseason opportunity. That distinction matters. It also matters when Caitlin Clark is brought into the conversation, because Clark's connection to this story is real, but it needs to be presented accurately. Bonner spent part of the previous season in Indiana alongside Clark, and their 2026 confrontation later became one of the more heavily discussed moments of the season, but there is no evidence that Clark caused Bonner's departure from Phoenix or somehow predicted this particular buyout. What Clark's presence does demonstrate is how interconnected WNBA storylines have become. Bonner's situation is a perfect example of that transformation. The most important thing for her now is what happens after the buyout process is completed, because her next destination could completely reshape the narrative surrounding this decision. If she joins a contender and becomes a meaningful contributor during the postseason, the buyout could eventually be remembered as one of the smartest decisions of her final season.
Hear ever again about how Dewanna Bonner was a toxicity in the Fever locker room, because clearly she's beloved. The Phoenix Mercury are literally saying, Dewanna, you have been great for us. You've played your heart out. You've shown us love. You've been a good teammate. Now we are going to let you go join a different team and fulfill your dream of winning a championship. You don't do that for someone that's a toxic teammate. You don't do that. Okay, if I was an organization and I had a little crybaby alive, a toxic ass person on my team that wanted to leave my team to go win a championship, I said, ass no, ass no. You're gonna.
If she joins a championship favorite but barely sees the floor, critics will immediately wonder whether the move was worth making. And if she somehow helps another team win a championship, the entire conversation will change almost instantly, because championships have a fascinating ability to make complicated career decisions look much simpler in hindsight. Nobody spends much time criticizing a player for chasing a championship after she is holding the trophy. That is especially true for a veteran with Bonner's resume. She staged a missing piece is not necessarily another individual award. It is another postseason run. That may ultimately be the explanation for what is happening. Bonner knows there are only so many opportunities left in her career, and at 39 years old, she cannot assume that another season is guaranteed. When a player reaches that point, the calculation becomes very different because every remaining opportunity carries more weight than it did 10 years earlier. If she genuinely believes she can still help a contender, why not take the chance? That does not mean every decision Bonner has made during the past couple of seasons should be immune from criticism, and it certainly does not prove that Caitlin Clark somehow predicted the future. What it does show is that Bonner still believes she has something valuable to contribute.
Ringing. Somebody ain't doing their job tonight. We gotta look at this realistically. The Lynx don't need her. The Liberty could get her. Valks too, which would make them better. Alyssa Smith just went down, so Aces might give it a shot. But we need her length for spacing, so our shooters can knock down that rock. Look, it's a playoff rental. We need her stretch coming off the bench. Because right now when our bench checks in, my confidence checks out. We need Bonner's length and knowledge of what the playoffs is all about. And we're most likely playing Clan Dewanna.
Now the story enters its most interesting phase. Which contender is willing to create the roster space? Which organization believes her experience can translate into postseason production? Which team sees her as a missing piece rather than simply another recognizable name? And perhaps the biggest question is whether Bonner can join the right team at exactly the right moment and turn what initially looked like a controversial career decision into one final championship opportunity. And then there is Caitlin Clark, whose name somehow continues to appear in this story, despite not being responsible for Bonner's decision. That is probably the most fascinating part of the modern WNBA. Clark does not have to be directly involved for the conversation to find its way back to her. There is almost no such thing as a quiet ending, especially for a player whose career has intersected with some of the league's biggest storylines. Dewanna Bonner is not simply changing teams. Whether that chapter ends with criticism, another opportunity, or one last championship celebration remains to be seen. And that is exactly why everyone will be watching her next move, because if Bonner lands in the right place and suddenly becomes the veteran piece that pushes a contender over the top, the conversation surrounding her will change faster than a WNBA playoff bracket after one shocking upset. At that point, the question will no longer be whether Dewanna Bonner made the right decision. The question will be whether the rest of the league should have seen it coming.